Don't. Shit, wrong intro. So occasionally when I'm making a video, I'll make a mistake. It could be because I get overwhelmed with information, or because I just don't take enough time doing the research. But one way or another, they happen. And so I wanted to take a minute in between making content and make a video about all the mistakes I've made in my videos. So first up, a general note, I have been pronouncing possessive plurals wrong. Take, for example, the word cities. If I was talking about the cities' populations, I would just say cities, just as if it were a possessive or a plural. But I've been pronouncing it with two S's, as cities's, which is technically incorrect. I think I picked this one up in college and I just never got corrected on it. However, you do pronounce the double S when you have a proper noun that ends in an S. So for example, Chris Roberts's. I just realized I cover a lot of Chris's on this show. Alright, on to the videos. First up, digital homicide. So first off, I mentioned that Jim makes all of his money on Patreon. It's not quite true. Jim doesn't place ads on his Jimquisition videos. Those do get money on Patreon. His gameplay videos, however, do get ads on them. Also, I mentioned that he probably had a sore spot about the game market crash of 1983, but he wasn't living in America at the time. Its full name is the American Game Market Crash of 1983. However, since he's a game journalist, I figured he'd be at least familiar with it. So I also mentioned that the case against Jim Sterling had been dismissed. That wasn't quite true yet. What had happened was that rather than suing as Digital Homicide Studios, the Ramin brothers had sued personally, because if they had sued as Digital Homicide Studios, they would have had to hire a lawyer, and no lawyer on this face of the earth would take this case. Eventually, the Ramin brothers retracted their lawsuit after Jim's lawyer contacted them and said, "This is only going down one way." Alright, Sonichu and Chris Chan. This one, as far as I'm aware, didn't have any errors, but I did leave a lot out. The problem was there's just so much information about him that I had to leave some out to make it a decent length. I wanted to give an overview, but not a detailed play-by-play. I didn't want to let the details get in the way of the story. One thing I did mess up was I said the owner of the game place was outside when Chris and his mother were taking photos. He was actually inside, then came outside to drive them off of his property, and then they drove over him. Alright, the SCP Foundation. This one was okay. I messed up a number in Fishmonger's legal jargon, but you know, whatever. The bigger thing I messed up was the threat levels of the SCPs themselves. So safe means that an object can be reliably contained. Euclid means that the object can't be reliably contained, but if it does break containment, it can be managed in one way or another. Keter is basically the same as Euclid, but with a greater threat when containment is broken. There are a couple of other classes. There's Thaumiel, which means that the SCP is actively used to help in containment of other SCPs. There's Explained and Neutralized, which are pretty self-explanatory. Then there's one with the rank of Apollyon, but if you're reading the SCP Foundation website, I'm not going to spoil that one for you. Alright, the Collyer Brothers. So I think that the photo I used of Homer might actually have been of Langley. The problem is that images pertaining to them are incredibly scarce, and so I just kind of had to take what I could get. I actually was going through imaged archives of old newspapers to try to find information about them. Alright, Vaporwave. This one, in my opinion, is my worst. The problem was I rushed production, and I really shouldn't have done that. I wasn't as in-depth with my research as I should have been. First of all, calling Daniel Lopatin's music noise music is not entirely accurate, it's more ambient. Also, I mentioned that he wasn't doing very well in this scene. He was reasonably successful. It's pronounced echo-virtual, not eco-virtual. And Deep Fantasy is not Vaporwave. They sound similar, but their production processes are entirely different. So this next mistake is probably the biggest one I've made yet. So I showed a picture and said that was of Ramona Xavier. That was a picture of a woman named Tara Bush. I was looking for images of Xavier, and there were multiple sources that said, yeah, this is Ramona Xavier, and they're wrong. Ramona, if you're watching this, I am so goddamn sorry. I owe you like 10 beers. There were also people in the comments giving better examples of Vaporwave in other places, both the visual and audible style of it. I probably should have brought up Hotline Miami. The moral of this story is I need to make sure I'm taking all the time I need with my research. So the Star Citizen video was generally okay. People accused me of being both too harsh and too lenient, which kind of makes me think I did a good job. I did make a lot of qualitative assessments though, and that's something that I would change were I to do it again. So the Plague Doctors. So I need to make a couple of clarifying points. points. First off, the Dark Ages is kind of a misnomer, and historians don't really use it very often anymore. When they reference the period, they call it the Middle Ages. From about 500 to 1000 AD, there was a period of stagnation, but that eventually tapered off. So calling them the Dark Ages kind of does them a disservice. So people were saying that there were cities more populous than cities in the Dark Ages, and that's true, but the concentrations of the people was much higher in the Dark Ages. Also, no one merchant would go all the way from the east coast of China to the west coast of Europe. What would happen is the packages would get passed along from merchant to merchant to merchant. So as for the plague itself, there has been a little bit of contention about what caused it. I used the latest study that I could find. Also, the plague isn't entirely gone. Occasionally a couple people will get it. However, it's not nearly so lethal anymore. Also, people from the medieval period didn't wear top hats. Alright, anime and otaku. So World War II is a sticky topic. Evidence suggests that Emperor Hirohito didn't get reliable information about the first bomb, or that he was even given a chance to surrender. Also, as funny as it sounds, nuking Japan did not cause anime. Let's just get that straight. So obviously I skimmed over a ton of information, but the video was already 40 minutes long, like more than twice as long as my episodes usually are. So some points needed to suffer for the sake of brevity. Empress Theresa, this one was actually fine. For those of you wondering, no, I have not gotten a nasty letter from Norman yet. I did, however, get some comments from the people in the argument, allegedly. They told me that there are some comments that actually are completely removed. There's no evidence of them left. Also, I still kind of want to do a live reading of the free sample on Amazon. If you're interested in that, let me know. Alright, so the DarksydePhil one was rife with minor errors. Simply put, I got overwhelmed. There is an absurd amount of information about him, but none of it is nicely collated like that of Chris Chan. And so there were a lot of things I just missed. There were a lot of points that I got wrong because I couldn't quite find the snippet of information that I needed. If I were to do it right, it would have taken me another month or so. Even so, I'm not happy with how it turned out. So first of all, if he had just made his videos private like I stated, he wouldn't have lost the views, but Machinima encouraged him to completely delete the videos, and that lost him views. Also, the game was Kingdom Hearts 1, not 2. I've never played them. Also, I kept saying that it was about to get worse. That's like the audible version of clickbait. So apparently Machinima didn't approach Phil, instead Phil got some of his friends to approach Machinima for him. Also, some people claiming to be from Lavaria Media did an interview with the Sons of Kojima. I can't verify that they are from Lavaria Media, but I still should have mentioned them. Also, Phil doesn't live in a condo anymore. He lives in a 2-story house. Still alone. Alright, so obviously this recording isn't from the same day, but I forgot to add something. In the DarksydePhil video, I mentioned that swatting was questionable. Okay, swatting is obviously a really awful and illegal practice. However, since I usually try to keep a neutral tone, I tried to keep my opinion as quiet as possible, but obviously just putting it in there at all was probably the wrong thing to do. This is the tricky thing about having a more neutral voice, is anytime you give any small bit of opinion, it sticks out like a sore thumb. So the mistake there was even using the word questionable. I should have just presented what swatting is. And then the horrendousness of the behavior would just be self-explanatory. Alright, Mother Horse Eyes. This one was okay. I didn't make any mistakes in this one, I don't think. Actually, Mother Horse Eyes messaged me on Reddit and thanked me for making the video, and that was really cool. Also, I got to have a short conversation in the comments of Reddit with Gabby Cat, and that was really fun. Alright, and that's about all I wanted to cover. There might be a few more minor errors left, but I covered everything that I really wanted to. I'm hoping to make this kind of video a regular occurrence, like every 10 episodes or so, just to cover all the minor mistakes that I'll make. Hopefully they'll stay short. So I actually have 2 down the rabbit holes in production right now. One of them is another historical topic. It almost feels like a combination of the Collyer Brothers and Chris Chan. The other one you definitely have heard about if you are a kid who grew up as the internet was getting popular, like in the 2000s. If you want to know about the stuff that I'm doing, follow me on Twitter, down in the description, and I'll see you guys next time.